Welcome to No Tourists Allowed, a podcast where two travel industry executives with a combined 71 years on the inside of travel and technology give up their secrets to do the thing everyone wants to do: travel better, pay less, and see more of the world. Here are your hosts, Mike Putman and James Ferrara.
Good day, everyone. I'm Mike Putman.
And I'm James Farrar. Welcome to No Tourists Allowed. Mike, it's great to be back on our regular schedule after our brief hiatus of holidays and travels. And there is a lot going on, a lot in the news, and a lot going on here at No Tourists Allowed as we try to give travelers a better way to travel, as we try to give some advice to make travel more meaningful, more authentic, more memorable,
And enjoyable
and enjoyable, right? This isn't a lecture.
and cost effective.
And cost effective. True. Wow. It's a tall order. Um, and to help with that, every season we seem to do a big giveaway, and this season is no different. Last week we announced for the first time that our 2025 um, winter into spring season will include a giveaway, a luxury cruise for two. And we are going to tease out the details over a couple of weeks. So we would like to add this week that it is a luxury cruise for two in a balcony cabin. So you
Right.
have space to go
That's enough. That's enough.
outdoors and get a bit of a view. The question is, a view of what? And
Yeah.
we will get to that next week. So if
James,
you do
James,
want to be, yes,
he's known for spilling the beans. So
I would have gone all the way there, but Mike stopped me.
yeah.
So how do you get in on this drawing? You go to notouristallowed.com, our website, and you look for the giveaway entry. Also, if you're finding this on YouTube, in the description, you'll see it. If you're listening on a regular podcast download because you subscribe to the podcast, well, first of all, thank you. We really love you. But secondly, go to the website, No Tourists Allowed. Look for the giveaway on the homepage. Look for the giveaway tab. It's in a couple of different places. And you simply answer a few questions as a regular listener. And the more questions you answer there, the more entries you get into the drawing, and you can redo it every week. After every episode, you can go back and enter again and get more points into the drawing. That's the way you do it.
Absolutely. We've kind of gamified it for you. So you'll need to listen in each week in order to get the clues for the questions that we may be asking you. And you can register, as James said, each week and get an additional chance, or sometimes it's even more than one chance, to put your name in the hat and win this beautiful vacation. And this one, I got to tell you guys, it's a stunner. So you definitely want to pay attention. You want to get involved, and because this is a big opportunity for you to win.
Mike, in past seasons, we gave away a Virgin Voyages cruise for two, real luxury cruise. And we gave away an all-inclusive stay in Jamaica. We've given away some great stuff, and this is another one.
Yeah, this one might top them all. Might just
okay.
Well, one of the things we wanted to cover with you guys this week is some really interesting intel in the airline space. The airline space is always interesting to talk about. If you follow the stocks of the U.S. carriers, it's a very volatile business. And if you look at the stocks over the period of time that these companies have been public, they have lost a considerable amount of money. But when they do make money, like last year, they made quite a bit of money. It's got a really nice bounce back effect. But it's really, if you want to make if you're one of those stock speculators there are going to be ebbs and flows of stock prices for airlines that kind of outpace the norm of the Dow or anything, because there's a lot of things that can affect the earnings, and you'll see the prices all over the board. So there can be some opportunities there.
The big change, the big turnaround in the last couple of years has come from a couple of things. But one of them, particularly, is unbundling the prices and getting into sort of NDC, new distribution content, fare families, separating the costs of things. So paying for premium seating, paying for additional luggage, and so on. That concept really changed the revenue model for airlines. And then also the big slingshot return of travel after the pandemic has been a boom for airlines for a couple of years too.
Yeah. And one of the stalwarts of the in the airline industry that didn't modify their business model until today, and they just modified it today, was Southwest Airlines. So with Southwest, you could bring your checked luggage on at no additional cost. I think you were allowed 2 pieces per person, and where all the other major carriers and low cost carriers would charge you for that privilege. And the announcement came out today that effective, I think it's May 1st, that they will now be charging for certain, if you buy a certain fare type, they'll begin charging for baggage, which is probably going to change the behavior of a lot of Americans that were choosing Southwest just as for the point of being able to take their luggage.
And on top of that, Mike, Southwest, another huge change for them, has announced that in the second half of this year, they will begin charging for assigned seating and premium seats. So they're basically adopting the model that the rest of the industry has been working on. They were kind of a last holdout there. And that's for flights. They'll start selling the second half of this year for flights starting in 2026.
So big changes at Southwest. And they used to be known as a low cost carrier, and if you compare their pricing today, they're not a low cost carrier any longer, but they may be trying to get back to compete at that level by possibly lowering their fares going forward and subsidizing the lower fares with additional ancillary revenue opportunities like bags and seats and so forth. Some decent opportunities ahead for Southwest to kind of kick back into maybe their old model somewhat. One other thing that I wanted to share too is a friend of mine had purchased a ticket on your favorite carrier, United, and he shared with me a couple of days ago that his type of fare did not come with a seat, and he knew that I was in the travel business, so asked me some questions about it. And I explained to him he does have a seat on the plane, he just does not have an assigned seat. Anyhow, he went on to show me his app, and he was flying on a hour and 20-minute flight from Greenville to Newark. So I said, let's take a look just to make sure. And he pulls it up, and the coach, to get an assigned coach seat, was going to be $78 for, which seems like exorbitant. And he paid $300 for a one-way flight, which seemed to be kind of market price, but it did not come with a reserved seat. So these airlines are really ratcheting up the cost of selecting your seat to the point that it's becoming a large portion of your overall travel cost should you elect to take a seat.
That's why you need a good travel advisor. You need a good professional travel advisor to be watching out for you, especially with those details and with a little insider knowledge about what's included in your fare and what's not. So you're making valid comparisons and you're not being hoodwinked. So, Mike, in addition to that, there's been some interesting data and pricing from Europe, and that's opening up. Maybe in air, we need good strategies, right? As frequent travelers, you really want some good strategies in purchasing your air, and you've discovered something going on in Europe.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to give a shout out to a company called Passport Premier. We're not affiliated with them. They don't pay us any advertising money or anything like that. But um, you can go sign up for a newsletter at their site, and they only do this like 3 or 4 times a year, so you're not gonna get a bunch of emails, but they monitor the marketplace and tell you when there are buying opportunities to buy, primarily business class and first class seats. So, they sent out, a message, earlier this week that was showing a couple of things that were really interesting. One is they've got a way to look at the inventory that's available on flights, in advance so they can see how many seats are available in premium seats. And they're finding that there happens to be a glut of business class seats, first class seats going eastbound to Europe right now. But the interesting thing is there's not any significant discounts. So for those of you who've never flown business class, a lot of people refer to this as first class. That's actually not exactly true. It's not first class. There are some carriers that still keep 3 and 4 classes of service, but you would have economy, premium economy, coach, and first class on a carrier that might have 4 classes of service. But generally, a business class seat would be what looks like a first class seat on a U.S. flight, that kind of width. But it would also have, generally speaking, not always, but lay flat seats, an elevated level of service, et cetera. The second interesting thing that this organization found was that flights that originate in Europe right now are about 300 to 400% less than what the same flight would cost if you started your travel in the US. So that was a mouthful, so let me explain a little bit more. If you were to buy a ticket from Los Angeles to wherever, Frankfurt, that in business class would be around $10,000. But you could buy that same ticket, business class, starting in Frankfurt to Los Angeles, back to Frankfurt, and it might be $3,000, right? So a significant difference in cost, and that is a very long flight too, by the way. So there's this thing that this newsletter is challenging. Why are the U.S. carriers, and it's the same carrier, same seat, etc., charging such a premium to people who want to originate their flights in the U.S.? And actually, I've got a real world example. Miami Istanbul on American Airlines plated flight is $10,913, so call it $11,000. That same flight, similar dates, beginning your flight in Istanbul, $2,630, which is a huge, huge difference. So how do you beat the system? How do you win at this game? So a couple of things you can do is if you, for those of you who are listening in the United States, is you can get a one-way ticket to Europe and begin your journeys in Europe. Okay. So one-way tickets used to be really expensive. Today, they're not quite so expensive, but this might be a good opportunity also for you to use your frequent flyer points because you're generally not penalized for taking a one-way flight using your frequent flyer points and then originate your flight from somewhere in Europe back to the US. And you might be saying, well, that's great, but that'll only give me a one way back to the US. What I do with the other one way. And the idea is you can generally change these flights. And this is general speaking. You need to talk to the airline or to your travel agent a year to use the second half of that leg. And in some cases, you can even change the destination, or you can go to the same destination. And as you guys know, the train network is really good over there, and there's a bunch of low cost carriers. So you can kind of get anywhere once you're in Europe at a very low cost. And then you can use that to get back to Europe. Then you can begin again originating in Europe and coming back to the US and kind of follow that path. So if you're a premium flyer and you don't like paying the really high prices that are being charged to people that originate their flights in America, that's a strategy you should think about.
Excellent. Um, Takes a little work, takes a little thinking, but well worth it when you think about the savings. And it helps us level the playing field a little bit, right? There are, good business reasons why airlines make flights available in other countries, other states, even. It works. You might sometimes when you book a flight or even book a cruise, you're asked what your state of residence is because there are promotional fares for certain populations, maybe that cruise line or that airline or whomever are looking to develop more business in that area. So there are nuances in the travel industry that not everyone is aware of. And sometimes you can legally and fairly take advantage of these things, right? So
Yeah,
good way
it's
to,
not, there's certainly nothing illegal or
right,
immoral about the
right.
strategy. I
No,
just
but you just have to know what's going on. And one way to do that is to listen to podcasts like No Tourists Allowed.
that's right. Nobody
Um,
wants to go on a cheap vacation, but everybody wants to go on a trip that's high value. That's one of the things that I stress is even if you're staying at the Four Seasons or Ritz Carlton, you don't want the guy sitting beside you in a lounge chair saying he paid $500 a night for his hotel and you paid 800 for the same exact room.
yeah, I always say I'm willing to pay, but not overpay, right?
Right.
Nobody wants to overpay. Mike, there's another phenomenon I think our listeners might be interested in, something we've seen growing in the requests from customers and the behavior of customers. And that is the rise of solo travel. And to talk about that, we have a special guest with us this week. Um, we have our producer, Nathaniel DeSantis. And welcome, Nathaniel.
Thank you. Thank you guys for having me on. I think this might be my second appearance on the
It
podcast.
It is. We can't always get you to come out from behind the curtain. But first of all, we want to thank you. This is the guy who makes it happen and makes us seem more professional and does the editing and the music and the production and even some of the marketing and optimizing of this. So we really appreciate you for that. But also, since some of you guys are watching us on YouTube or on a video, um, you can see that Nathaniel is a man of a certain generation, a little different from Mike and I, and so he brings an interesting perspective.
Speak for yourself,
And
James.
yeah, much different. He brings an interesting perspective, and we talk with Nathaniel a lot. We should talk with you more on air. You were quoting to us from an article you read recently. Tell us a little about it.
Right. So Airbnb on February 26th released a trends report for 2025. And it's really interesting. And the reason James is mentioning the age difference is because we were talking off mic. We think this might be a generational thing, but I'll explain the report really quick. They found that there's a 90% growth in solo searches this year. So individual one person travelers trying to find destinations. They average a 17-night trip. And of those solo searches, there's been a 40% increase in searches for trips with pets this spring by solo travelers. And something I found interesting off camera while you guys were talking just now is that of those solo travelers, approximately 75% of them are Gen Zers, which is really interesting. So we're seeing a younger demographic of people choosing to travel just by themselves and a huge increase, a 90% increase. And this is already a big trend in 2024 from what I was reading. So maybe you guys can start by kind of explaining this solo travel phenomenon that's going on.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because we've been hearing it from customers too. And I did um, postulate when we were talking that this was a generational thing, and it looks like the numbers bear that out. But there's also 25% of the market that is not Gen Z. And I've said that there are some older folks who have been divorced or widowed, and we see them traveling solo also. And there's been a rise there as well. What I think is really interesting about solo travel is some people think, "Oh, that's sad. Why are you traveling alone? Why would a Gen Zer not be traveling with a group of young friends, right?" But in fact, I traveled like this when I was younger. And Nathaniel, you told me that you like to travel like this too. And there's a reason. It actually, this kind of travel is very adventurous. You meet a lot of people traveling alone. I always felt that people kind of look over and adopt you, like they want to talk to you, or if you're good at opening up conversations. It's sometimes in some way easier to meet people when you're alone, because if you're with a bunch of friends, people don't break in on your conversation or maybe don't even approach you. But when you're alone, it's a little different. So there is a sense of adventure, certainly a sense of independence. You can do what you want on your own time, free to pursue your personal little passions. You're really into trains, but if you were traveling with a bunch of people, maybe they're not into trains and they don't want to go, you know, 20 minutes away to find that vintage. Or something. Um, so I think there's a misconception about solo travel, and it is fun, and you meet more people, and it's really interesting.
Even to the point that one of our travel partners, Riviera Travel, which they operate river cruises all throughout Europe. I was in a seminar, or a talk, I should say, just a couple of weeks ago on the cruise that we were on, and the rep from there shared that they have, I think it's 6 or 8 cruises a year that are only for singles. And the phenomenon generally is you can go on a regular cruise as a single and typically pay 200% of what the single uh, the per person rate is for double occupancy. So let me unpack that a little bit. Generally, the cabins on cruise ships or hotels are designed for 2 people. On a cruise ship, they've got minimal space, so they charge, instead of charging a fee per cabin, they charge a fee per person. And if 2 people stay in a room, it's one price. And if one person stays in the room, it's typically just double the one
Right.
price. But this company, Riviera Travel, has this number of different sailings throughout the year and only for singles. And it's only 120% of the double person fare. So it gives you an opportunity to travel as a single and not pay a big penalty or a fine, if you will. But it was one thing that the guy was saying was said that they had a very loyal customer that always came back to him and said, "Hey, I want to bring my friend on this singles cruise." And he said that's fine if they stay in a different cabin, but there can't be 2 people in one cabin. So they want to keep the integrity of this singles cruise or solo cruise, because I don't think it's necessarily a swinging singles type event. Um,
And there are other accommodations that suppliers make, cruise lines particularly, but also tour operators, vacation companies for singles. But you're right. Typically, things are priced double occupancy. So if you're going single, you have to pay twice that amount to take the room or the cabin. But then they run promotions like the one you're talking about. And I've seen them at, instead of 100% penalties, essentially, for being a single, you only have to pay 50% more or 25% more. In this case, with Riviera River Cruises, 20% more. Sometimes you don't have to pay anything. I've seen them waive the double occupancy requirement, And so you can go for a single, just pay for yourself, and that's it. And they call that no penalty, no single occupancy penalty. But they're pretty rare.
But there are
Um,
some, I think it's NCL, if I'm not mistaken, that actually has single rooms that are
they
designed
have solo cabins,
solo
and
cabins, yeah.
they introduced them, but other cruise lines like Royal Caribbean have come along and done it as well. The cabins are smaller. So if you're one of those people who want larger cabins, the solo cabins are smaller and they tend to be inside cabins. So you're they're really designed for one person. However, on NCL, they come with a central lounge. It's a special area of the ship that you get through with a key card, and all the solo cabins are around a little social lounge. And they have a social program actually for the people who stay there. So that's interesting. And other cruise lines have copied various parts of that. So you really can go as a solo traveler. And it's more and more popular. Also on providers that cater to younger people and have organized tours, they often have accommodations for singles, or they'll match you up with somebody. That's another way to accommodate.
Yeah, like
Uh,
Kontiki, I think's one that
yeah, Kontiki's a big one.
is that kinda
Yeah.
like the Tinder for travel? Where they just
You have
match
to
you up?
be I think you have to be, 30 or under. I keep trying to get on a Kontiki trip, but they stop me at the motor coach door. It's like, I don't think so.
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't know. You've traveled solo, Nathaniel. Where have you gone?
So a lot to unpack in everything we discussed. The most recent one I did was over in Spain, but I also met up with my sister and her at the time boyfriend, now husband. Congrats, Sarah and Ethan. I'll have to
Congrats.
throw
Yeah.
that out in there. But the solo travel, there are two things that I think really impact why people my generation. So I'm the start of Gen Z. I was the first of it. So I'm the oldest of Gen Z, and sometimes I feel more like a millennial, especially when I see the younger Gen Z. It's very different lifestyle and everything. But I think there are two factors that really lead to solo travel for us. One of them is that COVID hit at a really bad time in our lives, which is interesting because, COVID was a few years ago now, and you think there wouldn't be many implications for that. But one of the implications is that a lot of people lost out on these experiences that they couldn't do for, 1, 2 years, and they were stuck at home. A lot of my friends, when I graduated from college, they were a year below me, and they missed out on spring breaks, they missed out on formals, they missed out on summer vacations with the family, and now they have an income, and it's like, well, I can afford to do that actually. I don't have to, just like wish I could do it and or rely on my parents or my family to do it. So I think some of what we're seeing are the people from COVID who are like, I never got to experience that. And I wanted to be adventurous and I'm gonna do it. For me, in a lot of ways, that was kind of the impetus for why I decided to do the 3 weeks in Spain. I was like, I was stuck at home for a year and a half. I love talking to you guys behind a screen, but it's still home every single day for a year or two, and it can get a little bit tiring. And there's that adventure part. It's like we're young, we want to experience life and see the world, and there's no better time than now to do it. And then I think the other factor that ties into it beyond COVID is that, and this ties in with what you were saying, James, and I'll get to it, but there is a real loneliness problem with my generation because we're so stuck behind our phones and we don't leave the homes and we don't do these things. And there's something liberating about going to a place you've never been to and just talking to people. I found that when I was doing solo travel, I talk to more people than I would at home. And it's not like I'm actively going out to situations. It might even just be the person who's checking out my food or the person who is, just on the street, maybe smoking a cigarette. And I can be like, hey, how do I get to this place? And then it leads to a conversation. And it's a very connecting experience. I think that's all travel. It doesn't have to be solo travel. I've been fortunate to travel out with my family when I was younger, and you get that experience for sure. But there's something about becoming an adult, realizing you're an adult and just being like, I'm going to just talk to these people who have experienced a completely different life and completely different events than I have in a different country. And there's that interesting, unique aspect of like, oh, here's an American and a Spaniard. Like, tell me about your life and I'll tell you about mine. And it's really liberating for that, especially when you do kind of have that social desire, but you don't get that on Instagram or TikTok or just sitting at home watching Netflix, which I think we're all a little bit guilty of, regardless of the generation. But I think that's two big factors leading into it. And something we were discussing off mic when it comes to the increase in pet searches. I think that has to do a lot with COVID because I don't know how many of you listening remember, but during COVID, a lot of people got pets to deal with loneliness. And I love pets. I have a dog. Mike knows my dog. Mike's dog and my dog, they're married and dogs are great, but it's a 15-year commitment. You know, it's not like you just get it and then you can get rid of it. That is a child you have to take care of the rest of your life. And if you want to go travel, your options are bring them with you or pay a lot to put them up somewhere where you don't know the environment, you don't know how your dog will deal with it. Or you can take it to your parents, I suppose, if you're close enough, but not everyone has that luxury. So I think that is just a symptom of COVID as well, where and I see it. I live in Atlanta, and everyone my age has a dog. I've never seen so many dogs in my life. I was just in New York with my girlfriend. The amount of people my age with dogs is crazy, and it's funny because to me, that's like a reason I don't want a dog right now is because I do wanna be able to travel and not have that concern. So, I think it's a lot of the symptoms of the times. I think there's good things about the solo travel trend. I am definitely an advocate for it. I think you learn, and Mike, you've said this on the podcast a lot, James, you have too. You learn so much traveling. It is really a learning experience. And doing it yourself, you learn a lot about yourself too. Because you can't just stay in the hotel the whole time because you spent all this money and it'd be a shame if you're just trapped inside.
Well, listen, what you just said is a beautiful expression of the power and value of travel.
Yeah.
Imagine travel can help you with loneliness, travel can provide adventure, travel can help you grow. All these things you just said are so powerful. And that's what we're all about. That's what No Tourists Allowed is all about. So
Well,
thank
we
you
do
for
it.
that.
Yeah, it's why we do what we do.
I'll leave on one note. This is an interesting industry trend that maybe we can unpack for another episode. But Gen Z travelers, first of all, they're okay with 3-star hotels. The average hotel for a Gen Z traveler is a 3-star hotel. And they're very price sensitive, but they spend the most when they travel out of any generation with an average of $11,500 per trip that they go on. Um, which is really interesting because also as someone who's a part of that generation, where are they getting the money for this? They just drop 11, $12,000 on a trip when you're just into the workforce. But I just think that's really interesting from the industry perspective because I think that trend will continue, uh, and that these are buyers and purchasers that, for whatever reason, have a lot of money and are willing to spend it on the experiences, not the hotel, which is really interesting. So they'll stay in a 3-star hotel if it means they can do all the other really cool things, be it visiting local bars or doing local attractions, whatever it might be. So I think that's something that we will see an interesting uptake in. And especially with social media, I mean, I see it all the time. The amount of travel content on there, I think that feels that desire to go do it too. So interesting travel trends, but I'll let you guys get back to the main discussion.
Listen, that is something you're right. We will take up on another episode because there is it's not just generational. I have said in the last couple of months that 2025 travel in 2025 is going to be less about the places people go and more about the moments they are seeking um, when they're there. So we're going to talk more about that. And uh, something else you mentioned should be a subject, Mike, for another chat, and that's about how do we pay for this stuff. So there are new options in the marketplace now. We're offering, sort of buy now, pay later options, and even sort of layaway financial fintech new programs and features that we haven't talked about before. And I think that'd be a great topic coming up. But I think that's all we have time for today. Nathaniel, it's a real treat to have you out from behind the curtain. We're going to do that again.
Well, thank you guys for having me on. I'm glad I could talk directly to the audience. Longtime listeners will recognize my voice because the original intro done truly. So you longtime listeners, if you're like, why is this voice familiar? That's why. But I will hand it back to you guys to continue the discussion. And to everyone else listening or watching, I'll see you the next time that Mike and James want to pick my brain.
Yeah. Nathaniel has such a good voice for radio. And Mike, you have a good face for radio, actually.
Oh, thank you. I think you're supposed to say it the other way, but anyhow. Well, guys, that's all we have time for this week. Thank you so much for listening in. Certainly appreciate you spending a little bit of time with us as we try to give you some helpful tips on how to travel better and more authentically. And thanks so much for listening. Don't forget to go to our website, notouristallowed.com, and register for the mystery giveaway of a fantastic trip that's going to be coming up. So head on over to No Tourist Allowed. Please share with your friends if you like this podcast. Share the story and share what we're doing, and hopefully they'll come and join us and be part of the family.
Excellent. Thank you all. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, audience. And we'll see you in the next episode of No Tourists Allowed.